Gentlemen, 2024 is the 25th anniversary of one of the greatest achievements in all of music, Slipknot's first studio album. And that is why I'm starting this Slipknot album tier list immediately.
Oh, hell yeah. The combination of Slipknot and Korn throughout the 90s changed metal forever, creating the nu metal subgenre and giving us some of the greatest albums ever made. Every metal band today owes something to Slipknot and Korn. Speaking of Korn, we should totally do a Korn album tier list after we're done with Slipknot.
That goes without saying. You can't rank Slipknot without ranking Korn. Those two bands ruled the late 90s and early 2000s. We'll rank Korn next video.
I actually think Limp Bizkit was the best band of the nu metal era.
And I actually think you need to be fucking impeached. Anyway, let's rank the damn album. I'll say it, this is a masterpiece. Every song is a classic. Spit It Out, Eyeless, Sick, Purity, Liberate, and the song everyone knows this album for, even if you're not a Slipknot fan, Wait and Bleed. This album changed metal forever. S tier, this masterpiece right fucking now, or I'm leaving this fucking VC.
Trump, relax. It's an S tier. Every word you just said is true. Every song is a masterpiece. But the two that rule are Purity and Me Inside. Both are extremely disturbing and let all of the anger you've built up throughout the day go. But for me, Purity is the best song on the album and maybe the best Slipknot song. Being based on the old creepypasta from crimescene.com called The Girl in the Box was awesome. But it fucking sucks that Slipknot got sued and had to take the song off. But thankfully, the 10th anniversary version has Purity back on it. Now let's move on to Iowa.
Jesus, this album scares the shit out of me. I once had to have a negotiation about nuclear weapons with Kim Jong-un, and he wanted me to know not to fuck with him. So as he walked in, he had his assistant walk behind him with a CD player blasting People Equals Shit at full volume. I fucking shit myself.
You sure that wasn't your old age, diaper boy? Anyway, this album is another S tier. I don't care if it scares you. Joe, People Equals Shit is the nu metal equivalent of the national anthem. If someone has that song on their playlist, then you know they're a real Slipknot fan. Not to mention Left Behind, My Plague, The Shape, and Heretic Anthem are all such badass songs. This is also S tier. Might even be better than Self-Titled.
Not might be. It is better than Self-Titled. This album is a giant middle finger to the music industry, wanting to turn bands into products to be thrown away when the next big band comes along. That's what makes Slipknot special. And I'm choosing to ignore Joe's story there because I find it both hilarious and embarrassing that he was my vice president. Anyway, let's move on to Volume 3. The subliminal verses. For me, this is when Slipknot went a little softer. It was no longer the same intensity and the screaming that was in the first two. But to be fair, Corey Taylor had to change his vocal style after losing his voice for a while. But this album is still lesser compared to the first two.
That's not my problem with this album. My problem is that there's no swearing and lesser intensity than the first two. Sure, Duality, Before I Forget, and Vermilion are all Slipknot classics, and I love all those songs. But the reason Corey doesn't swear on this record was because critics pointed out that they thought Slipknot was nothing but swearing to sound cool and edgy. So Corey wrote lyrics with less profanity to prove something to those critics. But the whole point of Slipknot is that they have nothing to prove. I just don't get that. I was going to say B tier, but now I think that's too harsh. The singles on this record definitely save it from B tier, but still not enough for it to go into S tier. I think I tier is the perfect spot for this album. Slipknot have definitely made worse.
I get what you're saying, but the songs on this album are still amazing. Just not on the same level as the first two. I can agree with I tier. Now let's move on to All Hope Is Gone. Jesus fucking Christ. This album makes me sad. It's the last Slipknot album with Joey and Paul involved. For me, it's the last album where Slipknot was a brotherhood instead of a business.
Completely get what you're saying. I have a love-hate relationship with this album. Psychosocial is definitely iconic. I mean, do you guys remember this meme? That shit was hilarious. Anyway, I see what Obama's saying on its own. This is a pretty normal Slipknot album. But after you consider that this was the last album before Paul died, it really makes me feel like the whole metal community lost a friend. And Snuff never fails to make me cry. Of all the things on a Slipknot album, beauty is not something you expect. But that's what Snuff is.
I definitely miss Joey and Paul, but to be honest, I slept through this album. There just wasn't enough heavy in there. Really, Psychosocial was the only song I stayed awake for.
You can't even stay awake for negotiations with Putin and Kim, and they can fucking send a nuke anytime they want, Joe! So your opinion is invalid, just like last video. But on its own, I'd say this is a B-tier album. Really, there's only 4 good songs on here. Even Slipknot themselves hate this record, but given how emotional the circumstances are surrounding this album, I think I can respectfully put it into A tier.
Joe, you would sleep through a fucking grizzly bear breaking into the White House. Anyway, I can agree with Trump. I can only put this record in A tier because of its place in Slipknot history, even if it is a painful place for every Slipknot fan. Now on to point 5, the great chapter, Jesus Christ. Paul would be proud of this album. It's so fucking underrated for no reason. It's still intense, raw, and the cursing is back, and there's more heavy songs. This is what All Hope Is Gone should have been.
Okay, I get it. I'm sleepy. No need to break my balls about it.
Can't break what never worked to begin with. Anyway, yes, this album is so underrated for no goddamn reason. It's not as good as the first 2, but it's still an A-tier album. But I'd say it's better than Volume 3 and All Hope Is Gone. You know what, fuck it. If it's better than the A tiers, that means it's an S tier.
Damn, Donnie, that's a bold statement and one I can completely agree with. The great chapter goes to S tier. Now on to We Are Not Your Kind. I might get some hate for saying this, but I find this album kind of forgettable. The songs on this album are still great, but I'd say compared to the others, this is a low point. I think it's a B tier album. Not bad, just kind of forgettable.
Oh, thank God. I thought it was just me that thought that. Yeah, this is by far Slipknot's most forgettable album. To me, this album just felt like another slot to fill to finally end that 7-album contract with Roadrunner Records and go independent. Obviously, I don't think it's a bad album, just forgettable compared to the rest, but you can't really blame the album for that, considering that every other Slipknot album is either legendary or significant to the history of Slipknot. I don't know, maybe it's just overshadowed, and that's what makes it forgettable.
Yeah. With the exception of a few songs I largely forget, this album exists sometimes. I would say B tier. Now on to the end, So Far, Damn. Another emotional album, both as it's the album dedicated to Joey Jordison after his tragic death in 2021, and that it's the last Slipknot album with Roadrunner. It really feels like the end of an era. Obviously, it's not the end of Slipknot, but it feels like a large chapter of Slipknot is over, and the people who grew up with this band need to live with that. Anyway, I think this album is really underrated too. I don't think it's anywhere near S tier. I would say A tier. It's Slipknot's most experimental record. They took a risk with this one, and I respect that. I would say A tier. I have a feeling Joey probably would have enjoyed this album. Rest in peace to the greatest drummer in history.
Absolutely. I like to think Joey and Paul would be proud of this album and that Slipknot have come so far, going from just 9 guys on stage to one of, if not the most popular metal band in the world. I agree with A tier. The Dying Song, the Chapeltown Rag and Yen are all great songs, being experimental but still with what makes Slipknot what they are. And Finale feels like a special song, even though we all know it's not the end. Listening to Finale really feels like we're saying goodbye to Slipknot. It makes me cry every time.
You two need to stop chasing trends. I never heard anyone saying Joey was the world's best drummer before he passed away. Was he really that good?
I've had it with your shit, Joe. Don't you dare talk down on Joey's name. Obama. Let's go kick this fucking sleepy bitch's ass right fucking now.
Absolutely. We are fucking coming for you, Joe. You're not getting out of this, you incompetent fuck.
1 hour later.
I would like to formally apologize for my earlier comment. Clearly, Joey Jordison is the greatest drummer to ever walk this planet and always will be. I am clearly an incompetent, dementia-riddled bitch who is unfit to be president for saying such blasphemous things about a man who is a god behind the drum kit. Rest in peace, Joey Jordison, the true greatest drummer in history.
Anything else you want to say, Joe?
Yes. Please subscribe to Danimation for future animations, movie and game reviews, gaming videos, and of course, more AI Presidents videos.
No, Joe, not that. You know what I want.
Okay, fine. Vote Trump for 2024 and make America great again.
Good boy, Joe. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to flirt with that hot nurse over there.
Donald, wait. If you have sex, can you show me some pictures?
Joe, what the fuck?